"I'll leave at dawn," she said quietly, her voice steady in a way that surprised even her, though her fingers trembled as she folded the letter that had carried her halfway across the country on a promise that now felt thin as paper. The winter wind pressed against the cabin walls like a warning, snow whispering against the porch boards as if the land itself was listening. Clara Whitmore stood there with her 2 children clinging to her skirts, their small bodies warm against the cold that had settled deep into her bones since the moment the rancher opened the door and looked at her, not with welcome, but with hesitation sharp enough to cut. She had imagined this meeting 1,000 times during the long journey west. Imagined a man who would smile awkwardly, tip his hat and usher them inside, with the relief of someone whose loneliness was finally answered. Instead, she found Ethan Crowley leaning in the doorway, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes dark with something unreadable, as if her arrival had reopened a wound he'd spent years trying to close. The letter he'd written months ago had been kind, careful, full of hope measured in sentences that spoke of partnership rather than romance, of a home that needed a woman's touch and a future that required courage. Clara had answered with honesty, admitting she came with 2 children and a past she could not erase. And when his reply came accepting both, she believed, God help her, that this land might finally be where running ended. But now the silence between them stretched heavy, broken only by the soft sniffle of her daughter, Anna, and the way her son Samuel tried to stand taller, as if being brave might somehow convince the man before them to let them stay. Ethan's eyes dropped briefly to the children, and something flickered there, pain, maybe, or memory, but when he spoke, his voice was rough. He said the arrangement was complicated. He said the timing was wrong. He said he hadn't expected them so soon, or maybe at all. And though he never raised his voice, never spoke unkindly, the space he left between his words felt like rejection all the same. Clara nodded because she had learned long ago how to accept disappointment without breaking in front of her children. She thanked him for his honesty, for the roof he had offered for the night out of decency, if not desire, and when she said she would leave at dawn, she meant it. Pride had been stripped from her once before, and she would not beg a second time. The night crept in slow and cold, and as Clara lay awake on the narrow bed by the hearth, she listened to the children breathe and wondered how many more goodbyes she had left in her before hope itself became a kind of cruelty. Outside, Ethan sat at the table long after the fire burned low, staring at the door as if it might accuse him of something he was not ready to face. He told himself he was doing the right thing, that he could not bring a woman and children into a life built on grief and unfinished ghosts. He told himself he was protecting them from a man who had buried his first wife in the frozen ground just beyond the fence, from a ranch that demanded more strength than kindness. But when the wind howled and he imagined Clara and the children walking away at first light, something twisted in his chest that no amount of reason could untangle. Memories rose unbidden, his late wife's laughter, the empty rooms, the silence that followed loss like a shadow, and with them came fear sharper than loneliness, fear that opening the door again would only invite more pain. Yet as the hours passed, doubt crept in alongside regret. He remembered the way Clara had stood straight despite everything, the way she shielded her children without a word, the quiet dignity in her goodbye. This was not a woman looking for rescue. This was a woman offering partnership, and he had turned her away because he was afraid. When dawn finally bled pale light across the snow, Clara rose without waking the children at first, standing by the window to take one last look at the land she had hoped to call home. She dressed them carefully, wrapped scarves around small necks, and lifted the satchel that carried all they owned. Her hand rested on the door latch for a moment longer than necessary, not because she expected it to open, but because part of her needed to believe she had truly tried. That was when the sound of boots crossed the floor behind her. The door did not open outward as she planned, it was pulled wide from the inside. Ethan stood there, hat in hand, eyes red as if sleep had never come. "You're not leaving," he said, the words firm but not unkind. Clara turned slowly, heart pounding, ready to refuse whatever pity he might offer. But then he continued, voice breaking just enough to betray the truth beneath it, "Not alone." He looked at the children, then back at her. "If you stay as family. All of you. I won't pretend I